Okay, hi, well welcome everybody to my very first video demo. Today I'm going to be demonstrating gouache. Gouache is for those of you who aren't familiar, gouache is opaque watercolor. It was a preferred illustration tool because you can use it thin like watercolor, but then you can also use it thicker, and make it opaque. And the nice thing is it's flat, so it's easy to photograph. So today I'm going to be doing a scene from it's a little town in France called Montpazier, a little farm scene with a stream, and I'm working on these are Canson watercolor artboards. They're designed for plein air painters. They're nice. They come on a little pack like that, and I have a butcher tray here full of dry gouache. This is dry gouache here. Since I'm using it like watercolor, just like oils, I start thin and work fat into the wetter. I'm glad you're doing a lot of cutting here. But I'll start and use this. And just to freshen them up, I take a little spray bottle and give everything a spritz. And I've got a container of water and a nice variety of brushes. So what I usually do, I start with more of a medium-sized brush, and then I start working to the smaller ones. So that's a good size start. These are all mostly like acrylic brushes. They're got a little bit of a nice, spring to them. They're not real soft like some of the watercolor brushes. Okay, so when I start painting on with gouache, this is old gouache that's all dry, which is basically like it's like watercolor pan watercolors. So I just give it a spritz with my little sprayer to sort of freshen it up. Take a brush, and since I'm working on an easel, which isn't my normal way of working, I'm going to start at the top. I got a little thing to catch any major drips, but a little drip here and there never hurts. Then we'll go a little bit, just a little more violet down here. So when I'm working in gouache, there's a lot of different ways to work in gouache. I start out using the gouache pretty much like transparent watercolor, just to lay down, a little bit of tone everywhere. See a little spot I missed. There you go. And switch to another brush, and we'll. So normally when I'm painting landscapes, I hardly ever start with green. I usually start with the complements and put down some colors. Because the last thing I go to is the green generally. Put a little tree up there too. So my light is pretty much coming from this side, so that's going to be my warmer side of the trees. But I've always liked gouache because I'm pretty much a failed watercolorist, so it gives me a chance to sort of redeem and cover up all my mistakes. And that's one of the real charms about gouache. Make it a little darker down that corner here. The nice thing about this layer is you don't have to be terribly precise. You're just putting down color, and actually the variance in your brush strokes makes it a little more interesting. Okay. Let's put a little more color on those trees. There's a little too much there. Let's see, work on that little house back there. So this is a little different than I normally work. Normally I work sort of with it laying down, so I have to be a little more careful about drips. You know, normally drips are a good thing, especially when we're working with pastels. But with the gouache, I can still cover up most of this, but you know, it's just a little more work to do that. So now I've pretty much got, we switch to a smaller brush. We'll start working on some of my darks. So for that I'm going to mix a combination of green and violet. A little more violet. Come on, violet, do your thing. There we go. Maybe a little more violet than that. There we go. So my darkest darks will be these two trees in the foreground. Back there as well. Just get a little glue to that. Help push back just a bit. Not sure exactly what this feature is, but it makes a little bit, some kind of, helps with that little damming thing on the So since we're going back a little farther in space, I'll go a little bluer back here and a little bit lighter. Hey, Margaret. So work on some of these details around the house, and this also this area here. Catch that greenery coming down. We got another little tree here I forgot to put in. So now I was going to go through and I've gone to an even smaller brush. I'm just going to start working on some, maybe just put in some smaller areas of darks and just maybe just sort of flesh out some of these other areas. I'm still working very much more like traditional watercolors, because I know if I really mess anything up, I can always go back and cover it up with the more opaque gouache. Bigger brush, I'm just going to throw a little. The other wash I've put down already is not moving around, so that's a good thing. A smaller one. Start building up this shady side of the bank here. A little bit darks over there. Might as well put in some of this reflection of the tree. A little darker would be good. Yeah, the nice thing about working in the gouache too is you don't have to spare out the lights. You can just kind of keep going over and building up your darks, because you can always come back in with, you know, the white as part of the gouache. Okay, what is And I'll probably go refine a little bit, but just try. What I always like to do is just try and fill up all the white. Make this reflection of this tree a little darker, especially where it's meeting the try to get just a little more darks in there. Go to an even smaller brush. That's why it's nice to have I like working with these small flats. Especially when you're doing architectural things. Because you turn them one way and you get a nice little thin line, and the other way you get great for doing windows and other architectural features. All right, so I've got pretty much the transparent part that I want to get done. So I'm going to start going. So what I've done is I've actually put down some fresh tube gouache. I should just clean my palette here a little bit while I'm at it. Okay. There's the paper. So now I'm going to go and probably start going a little more opaque in some of these areas. So first off, I'm going to define this little dam that's running. Make it a little more ochre-y. Brown brush instead. Pardon me for having my hand in the way. So I put down that pinky color, and just like acrylics, it actually dries a little darker, so I want to just lighten that up a bit in places. Sort of catch. edge. I'll come back to that. Put back to a little bigger brush again. Orange to that. That's why using the flat, you can, turn it in different directions to get these little thin lines, and then you tie them together with some thicker lines just by turning the brush. A little more green going down there. Yeah, like you've got that really nice, bright, sunny patch of grass back there. Green and a lot of yellow. It's always good to sometimes just to mix just a touch of white into it, so it makes it even more opaque than. See how nice and sunny that looks now? Have a little extend over there. I gotta work on the tree a little bit. I was trying to knock down some of the green with the complement. Work on the house a little bit. It's always a good idea just to jump around. Don't lock yourself into one area too long. Nice little simple chimney. One thing about doing French houses, it's probably the hardest thing are these little roofing tiles. So this is kind of just a hint. You can go up a lighter in that. Go crazy if you're trying to get every little tile. More. Cut into that tree. I started like having that be over a little bit more. Wall color before we get to that bush. Maybe we got a little dark there. See, this is something I never could have done in watercolor. Let that dry for a bit, and I'll just work into some of the other areas. Grab some white. Go to an even smaller brush. White, so it pushes it back just a bit. Since I made the house wall a little darker, I guess I might make the window a little darker as well, and the shadow. Soften that with a little water. Okay. I think I've lost part of that bush, so I go back and is where I get to do some of my noodling. Okay, and we've got the grass done. I put a few little flowers in the background. We'll just sort of add a little bit of lighter ones too. Just to break it up a bit. Trick is just keeping them fairly random. Too much paint there. Definitely the fun part, just putting all these little noodly things in. Okay, I think we're done.